GoogleAdsStrategy.com.
Hello and welcome to the Google Ads Strategy Show, where I answer your questions about Google Ads. If you have a question that you'd like me to answer, head over to GoogleAdsStrategy.com and ask it, and I might just answer it. I'm your host, Kyle Sullerud, and today I'll be answering the question, how does audience targeting work? So first, let me define what an audience is, and then I'll talk about how the targeting actually works. So an audience is basically a group of people that is somehow identified within Google's system. For example, you could have a remarketing audience. So if you've set up remarketing on your site, and then you've created an audience of people who have visited your site, that is an audience. And an audience could have 100 people on it. It could have 1 million people. We don't know who those people are exactly. We just know that they are in a particular audience. So if we've set up a remarketing audience, we can then set up our ads to show to people who are in that audience. And I'll get into some details of that here shortly. Some other types of audiences are predefined by Google. So they have what are called detailed demographics. And these are things like parental status, marital status, education, homeownership status. Now, does Google really know whether or not you are married or single? The answer is not really. It's not like Facebook where you're actually entering that information in your profile. So for Google to have these audiences, you need to keep that in mind. These are not going to be completely accurate. Just because you think you're targeting a list of married people or parents, it doesn't mean that's all you're targeting. It also doesn't mean that maybe there are married people who are not on the list. So if you're only targeting a list of married people, that's who you're trying to reach. There are going to be married people outside of that list who you're not going to be reaching. Vice versa. There are going to be unmarried people on the list of married people. That's just how it works with Google. You just have to deal with it if you want to try to make use of these audiences. They simply do not know everything about everyone who is using the internet. So those are detailed demographics. Google also has in-market audiences. And these are people who are actively looking for something. Within the last week or two, they've actually been researching something with the intent of making some type of purchasing decision. They are in the market for something. And these are all predefined. You have things related to children's products, vehicles, different things that people might be researching before making a purchase, real estate, travel. So based on people's search behavior and based on the things they're browsing online, Google puts people in these audiences. They feel that if you've been browsing a bunch of travel websites, you've been searching for keywords related to travel, you are now in the market for some type of travel. And even within some of these in-market lists, it's broken down. So within the travel list, you have air travel, bus travel, car rental, cruises. So there's lots of options for these in-market lists. Sometimes they're pretty good. You find that if you're targeting lists like this, you can get pretty good results. Sometimes not so much. So it's not a magic bullet here where if there's an in-market list for the thing you're selling, it doesn't necessarily mean that's going to produce great results for you, but it's always worth trying these out. So how do we make use of these audiences? How does this audience targeting work? Well, briefly, let me talk about how it works in display and YouTube campaigns, and then I'll talk about how it works in search campaigns. So with display and YouTube video campaigns, you can set it up so that your ad would show to anyone who is in a particular audience. So if someone is in my remarketing audience, or if someone is in an in-market audience for blank, I can say I want my ad to show to all of those people. That's the only criteria that I want to use, is that they are in this audience. Okay, you can do that with YouTube ads and with Google display ads. Also with YouTube and Google display ads, you can layer these audiences with other criteria. So you can say, I want my ad to show to people who are in this audience and who are also browsing websites related to this topic, or people who are in this audience and who are also watching videos related to this topic. So you can layer this audience targeting with other types of targeting. One thing you cannot do is layer different audiences. So you can't say, for example, you can't layer your remarketing audience with an in-market audience. They don't allow you to do that. You have to layer audiences with other types of targeting, like topics or keywords, demographics, things like that. So that's how it works in those types of campaigns. You can target anyone and everyone who's in that audience, or you can layer it with other types of targeting. Now, in a search campaign, it works a little differently. So you can target anyone and everyone who's in those audiences, but they also have to be searching some keywords that you're targeting. So it always has to be layered with the keywords. Your search campaigns need keywords. Your ads aren't going to show up if you don't have keywords. So keywords come first, and then we can do different things with the audiences in addition to that. So there's two different things to do with the audiences. You can add an audience for targeting. Okay, what this means in a search campaign is that your ad will only show if someone is searching the keywords you're targeting and they are also in a audience that you are targeting. So this is fairly limiting because your ad will not show to anyone who's outside of an audience that you've added. So even if someone is searching one of the keywords you're targeting, if you've added audiences for targeting, your ad is not going to show to those people unless they're in an audience that you're targeting. There aren't many use cases for this. You usually don't want to target your ads because this just gets too narrow. You're going to be missing out on a lot of traffic this way. But that is what the targeting option does. It requires that your ad is only going to be shown to people who are in the audiences that you've added. The other option then is observation. And with observation, it's not going to be so narrow. Someone could be searching the keywords that you've selected, and they don't have to be in one of your audiences. They're still going to be eligible to see your ad. What observation does is it lets you add your audiences, and then you can see how the data is different for your different audiences, and also how it's different compared to people who are not in an audience. So what's the point of that? Well, you can adjust your bids for different audiences. So let's say you add 5 or 6 audiences that you feel are relevant to the thing you're selling. You observe how this data looks, and you see that for a couple of these audiences, the return on your investment, the return on your ad spend, is much higher than average. The people who are in these particular audiences, they are performing very well. You're getting a lot more sales from those people than average. What you can do then is take that data and you can, let's say, increase the bids for these audiences. You can, knowing that these people in these audiences are going to be more profitable, you can then bid more for them. So now you're paying more per click for people who are in these audiences, but because you're making extra profit, that's fine with you. You'd rather have more traffic. You'd rather pay more per click in order to get more traffic because you know those people are going to become customers at a higher rate than average. So that's one thing you can do with audiences. You can also decrease bids for certain audiences or even exclude them altogether. Now, remember what I said earlier, Google doesn't necessarily know everything about people. They don't, even with the in-market audiences, they're not necessarily accurate. So I wouldn't recommend excluding an audience from the start of a campaign. But if there's an audience that you might consider excluding, let's say you're just selling a product for homeowners and you think it would be a good idea to exclude renters, what you can do is add the renters audience for observation. Okay, we're testing a hypothesis now. You add the renters audience for observation, so it's not going to change your campaign at all. Everyone's still going to see your ad. We're just observing the audience. And then let's say our assumption, our hypothesis turns out to be true, that people in that renters audience are not becoming customers. What we can do then is either significantly decrease our bids for renters. We can put in a negative bid adjustment, or we could just exclude that renters audience altogether. But because of the inconsistencies and inaccuracies in a lot of this audience data, I wouldn't recommend excluding an audience before running that test. So I'd always recommend starting with an observation, whether we think it'll be a good audience or a bad audience, and then making a change only after we see how that audience actually performs. So that's how audience targeting works. Again, this is the Google Ads Strategy Show. I'm your host, Kyle Sullerud. And by the way, don't forget to leave a review on iTunes. If you're getting value from this podcast, I would certainly appreciate a review. I will read it and I will love you for it. So thanks again. I will talk to you later.